Hello, my friends, and welcome to Mount Lemmon in Tucson, Arizona. Today, I'm here to talk about my Bigfoot encounters from Oklahoma. I thought the appropriate place to talk about this would be in the beautiful pine forests up here where the Bigfoots live. I'm just going to kind of talk about my Bigfoot stories from the beginning. It's just going to be kind of a lengthy podcast style kind of video. I'm going to tell my stories, and at the end, I am going to discuss what I think Bigfoot is. It's going to be very interesting. It's not what you think, so definitely stick around. So anyways, little background. I've always been interested in Bigfoot, UFOs, conspiracies, all that good stuff. Growing up in Texas, I just wanted to go Bigfoot hunting all the time. We visited the Northwest a couple times, and just the Bigfoot stuff is everywhere up there. It wasn't until I was a certain age that I remember seeing a documentary on TV called Bigfootville, I believe it was, but it was about Bigfoot encounters and sightings in Oklahoma, of all places. Guess Bigfoot's a Sooners fan. But I will say that I was very intrigued, and I thought, hey, Oklahoma's not that far. I would love to go Bigfoot hunting up in Oklahoma. And that's exactly what I did. After my high school career was over, I gathered up my friend Corey and our stuff, and we headed out north to Oklahoma from Dallas. So I wanted to know where's like the best place. And so I Googled it, did some research, and I found that a little tiny town in the middle of nowhere called Honobia, Oklahoma was the place to go Bigfoot hunting. I read a story about these people that lived in a cabin, and they were having just Bigfoots kind of invade their property and banging on their walls and making calls and just creating a racket. And just as most conspiracies go, the men in black showed up, people wiretapping their phones. Apparently these people shot at a Bigfoot, and there was blood and maybe body matter. I don't think any of that's been recovered, but it was a crazy story, and I went, that is the place I want to go Bigfoot hunting. So me and Corey, my friend then, we went up and decided to see what we could find. Now, as I talk about these Bigfoot stories, I do have some video clips and pictures of these. I'm going to try to scroll through it just to keep it interesting, relive some of the memories. I think I had a lot of videos from some of my earlier trips, but they were on my old computer, and when I went to visit my cousin in Colorado, I set my computer down for a second outside his apartment, and a bum came by and stole my computer, so I think those videos are gone. So we'll just see what I have, whatever I scroll through. So anyways, me and Corey headed up to Honobia. Now, when you get to Honobia, there's nothing there. There is a little country convenience store, has some supplies for sale, some Bigfoot stuff, because that's what they're famous for. The owner, Miss Klein, is a wonderful lady. The food they prepare there, because it's like a little diner, is amazing. Oh man, it's so good. And they have a Bigfoot festival up there in October. And it was just kind of like, wow, this is a really down-to-earth, homey place. What's funny is we talked to the lady there, Miss Klein, and she does not believe in Bigfoot. And a lot of the other locals don't, which is interesting. But so we got settled there. We were camping out behind the store. And we were just kind of looking around. And they're not mountains there. They're big hills. But there's a big hill, and we're like, you know what? We're going to climb to the top of that around sunset, and we're just gonna do our thing. And the thing is back then, watching a lot of programs like Finding Bigfoot and all that stuff, you're just like, you know what, we're gonna out there, woo, do all that silly stuff. And so anyways, it's getting close to dark, we're climbing up the mountain, and we find a path up there. And it's really dark, where there's just that little bit of light left. And of course, I'm going to make a Bigfoot call, so, woo, I did one, didn't hear anything. We kept walking. And then I decided to make another Bigfoot call. And so, I make my little sound, and the second my voice cut off, we just hear a really loud bam on the ground. Like a really loud, like if somebody would have taken a really, really heavy rock and just went poof. And it was loud enough to just startle us. We're like, whoa. And we're just kind of silent for a second, like, what the heck is that? We're in the middle of nowhere, so it's like there shouldn't be anybody up here. So we're like, kind of uneasy, so like, let's head out of here. So we start to walk back, and we hear it again, just bam on the ground. It was like, okay, so we just kind of take off running, like, what the heck was that, Not to say it was Bigfoot, but I've had similar things happen like that there in the future. And it was just like really weird, and it was really weird because it was just like right after I made my Bigfoot calls. So that was just crazy. Went back to camp, and we actually met another gentleman there. It was kind of late. He was just setting up. He was starting a fire, and he was like, yeah, I come out here to do geology work a lot. And actually that hillside y'all were on, because we told him our story, he's like, I've actually heard some vocalizations come from that hillside. And we were like, crazy, right? So because of that kind of spooky experience that we were not expecting whatsoever, the next day we decided to go to the complete opposite side, driving around the hills for the day in the forest. And we're like, we're gonna stick next to my truck because Bigfoot comes charging at us from the woods. We're gonna hop in the truck and get out of there. But we went to another hillside, and it was close to sunset, and I made another call, and we did hear something. I don't really have like a good footage of that. I was filming on the camera recorder, but you just hear this, and then of course my friend is like, dude, and it's like you can't hear it because he's making he's laughing because he's like, what, Now that, I don't want to say it was a Bigfoot or something, because I do understand there's coyotes and other animals and they can make sounds, but I will get to that comparison of sound at that point. So that was kind of all that happened on that one trip. Going on to the next trip, it was me, my friend Corey, and our friend Aaron. So we brought along another friend, and this time around we bumped into a gentleman who's like, hey, if you want to really get some Bigfoot experience, you got to go up to these logging roads. You need to camp out there. You got to be there overnight, and that's where the action's going to happen. So we kind of went around with him for the day on his all-terrain vehicle, explored some spots, and we did find a spot to set up. Loaded everything up in the truck, went over there, and kind of hung out for the evening. Beautiful evening. Had a lot of fun. And then at night, we kind of make some wood knocks and some sounds. For this particular trip, all that really happened was kind of late at night. We were in the tent, and the moon was out, but of course you can't really see past the tree line. But just like that first trip where we heard those really loud thumps, whatever it was, this time it sounded like really loud footfalls, like just something going stomp, stomp, stomp 3 times in a row, and it was loud. And I'm up in the tent, and I spring up, I'm looking around like, what the heck was that? It's just like, whoa. And so kind of quieted down, and a few minutes later, same thing, stomp, 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 and it's just like, something's out there for sure. But we really didn't hear anything else. I swear that at some point during the night, there was maybe just some like sounds of like some rocks kind of scraping along the ground, like something was kind of throwing some gravel. Could have been my imagination, Bigfoot's on the brain when you're sleeping out there, and I'm on high alert, but those really loud stomps really close to the tent was pretty insane. So that will start to bleed into the next trip I took up there. So this time around, I was with two friends, Ted and Chelsea, and I was like, guys, I'm totally a Bigfoot enthusiast. I've been up to Oklahoma a couple times. I've heard some stuff. You guys got to come check it out. And of course, they're like, dude, you're crazy. There's probably nothing up there. It's probably your imagination. It's probably somebody out messing around, which I hate when people say, hey, it's probably just some bumpkin out there messing around. Dude, nobody knows I was coming up there. Nobody knows that I was going to show up. Nobody's like, hey, let me go get in a Bigfoot costume and go silly, okay? So anyways, we go up there. It was February, so it is pretty cold, but we did find this other mountain path that we pulled up on, and it was after dark, or about dark, and so we started walking, and of course I'm like, all right, I'm gonna kick off the night by letting the Bigfoots know we're here. So we're walking up the path, and I make a call, and what was crazy is we got a response immediately, just right back at us. Now I wanted to mention, because I know a lot of people, well, what if it's a coyote or something? No, I totally understand, but we heard a call, and then immediately after, coyotes all started yipping. And you can hear a distinct difference in the sound. Now, I know that some people have said that Bigfoots could mimic, sounds sounds that they hear, like coyote, owl, something like that, but there was a distinct difference in the sounds. And it was kind of like, whoa, like we got a response right away. Now this night gets even crazier. We're walking up the path and we get to a point where we kind of make a few more sounds and we're like, okay, we'll turn around. So we're walking back to my truck and my friend Ted just is kind of like, I just feel like I keep hearing, like when you throw a rock through trees and you hear like the branches, the rock hitting the branches and stuff, I feel like I keep hearing that sound. And so I'm kind of aware, but then all of a sudden we're walking all three in a row and a rock this big comes flying over my shoulder. 100%. Now I stopped and I looked at both of them and I'm like, is this you guys like messing around? Is that what's going on here? They were not messing around. There was no playing around. It was like something just threw a rock at us. And because it was just like, oh crap, like we kind of started walking faster to my truck, I saw the rock that Bigfoot threw at me and I did not pick it up as a memento to be like, here's the rock that Sasquatch threw at me. And I'm so mad. But he kept hearing like the rocks through the trees, and then there was one point where we were closer to my truck, but my friend Ted, he was walking next to the forest line. He jerked, just like, whoa, and I was like, what? And he was like, I heard like a huh, or something like that. I didn't hear it, but he says he did, and it caused him to kind of jump. So we did just get back in my truck. We did go back to the tent, which is the same place where we had set up where I heard the loud footfalls before. And from that point on, the entire night, this is where I want to take all the Bigfoot skeptics and I really want to just shake them or have them had been present that night, because that whole night there was Bigfoot calls all over the mountainside. I mean, there was just over here, over there, over here, different pitches, different tones, high, low, and it was just insane. We're sitting there by the fire listening to this symphony of Bigfoot calls from all over the mountainsides, and it's just blowing our minds. So they became believers. Not only did we get a rock thrown at us, not only did he get startled by a grunt, but there's this call. That night was insane. Now, closer to the tent, it got to a point where we started hearing consistent and it just kept going. And then it finally dawned on me, why am I not filming? What am I doing? I need to film this. And I did catch the recording. So I'm going to cut right here, play that recording for you. Okay, that was what we've been hearing. I got it on film. So anyways, that is the recording that we kept hearing by the tent and or the howl, and it was just like, whoa. Now obviously some people are like, oh, I hear that it's a coyote, but it's like, why would a coyote make that sound, wait a few minutes, make the sound again, wait a few minutes? And this is considering we were listening to just howls and calls all across the hillsides, and it was just crazy. But what's even more interesting is when we finished up with that trip, me and Chelsea went back on our own the next weekend, and that same Bigfoot call that I had recorded, we heard again. So it was close to midnight, and just all of a sudden we're in the tent and you just hear just really loud, and it was startling because it's quiet, and then whoa. But see, as a comparison, when the Bigfoot made that sound really close to the tent, it was loud, and then immediately a whole pack of coyotes started yipping, so you can tell the difference. That chip, that, you know, because I've heard coyotes a lot, not the same sound. Now that trip, he made the sound once and then did it again. So it was like 10 minutes later, sound, I mean, this thing was right next to the tent, just so loud, and it was just crazy. So that was kind of like the first big lump of the story. I'm going to go into the second part where it gets even crazier than that. And then we'll conclude with what I think Bigfoot is. Hope you're still sticking around. I'm going to take a quick break. Alright guys, as you've probably noticed, I have been wearing this U.S. Forest Service Sasquatch Department shirt while talking about this video. So I do have an online Etsy shop that features my art and other things I'm interested in. It's called Conspiracy Corp because I'm into conspiracies. I have X-Files stuff, Bigfoot stuff, art, UFOs, all that good stuff. This U.S. Forest shirt is available for sale on my Conspiracy Corp shop, as well as stickers of this. There's a mug. I'm planning on doing a camping mug as well for this. I will put the link to my shop down below. If you're watching this and you do decide to get a cool U.S. Forest Service shirt, big mug, or anything else from my shop, use code Bigfoot to get 10% off, and I will be personally happy. Thank you very much. So after the shameless plug, I do want to move on to the latter half of my stories. Hope you're still with me, because like I said, when I go into what I think Bigfoot is, you are going to be surprised at my answer. So going forward, I was making a video on my old channels. I was talking about all my experiences. It was a channel called Bigfoot Diaries. I have not posted on that in a very long time. Everything has now been moved over to Travels with Travis. So, there was a gentleman that is from the area or was a local in the area that did reach out to me after seeing my videos, and we did talk a little bit, and he said, hey, you know what's interesting is there's a lot of people here that have lived here their whole lives. They've never seen anything, they've never heard anything, and it just feels like watching your videos, every single time you show up, there's something happening. You hear a call, you hear the... So now the guy was a little interesting, but he did say, I feel like there's something about you that the Bigfoots have like kind of a comfort with unveiling themselves to you, which I thought was something interesting, maybe your energy or something of that nature. Because like I said, at the Honobia Creek Cafe, the lady that runs it, they not Bigfoot believers whatsoever, and considering just how much activity that I've heard up to that point, it's like, how do you not? You live here. I mean, you could open up your window on any given night and hear them making calls. So he invited me to do an expedition, and he's like, you know, all that stuff they do on the Bigfoot channels where they're hooting and hollering and this and that, he's like, all of it's garbage. You need to go out. There's a spot that I like to go to. This is the best place to hear them. This is the best place to see them. You don't shine lights on them. You don't need to make silly calls. This is what we're going to do. So anyways, I went up there in October when it finally cools off, and we went to this property and, you know, preparing, hanging out, and there's a bunch of other people that he invited to the property for his expedition. So there's a whole group of us, but it gets dark and we go down into what I call the pit, and you're just kind of like surrounded on all sides. You know, he's like, this is kind of a perfect funnel spot because they're more comfortable coming around when they kind of have the advantage land-wise, you know, to kind of keep a distance from you. Now this night we're out there, and like I said, the guy is kind of interesting, but he gets to a point where it's really dark, barely any light in the sky, and he says, I feel the energy in the woods shifting. And right before he had said that, there was a small orb of light that we all saw. It was just kind of like a red orb that just whoosh, which was just really weird. And I don't know what it is about these woods. These woods, there's just some energy out there. They just feel different. Like, I'm out here in these woods, and I haven't felt that same energy here. But he feels the energy change, and then he's looking around, he's looking, and his eyes lock onto a spot, and he goes, right there. And we're all kind of looking, like, what's going on? And he's like, I see their eyes. So we're looking, and I'm looking, I'm like, I'm not sure what he's looking at. And he's like, all right, I'm going to point, follow my eyes. He's like, you see that star in the sky there? Now follow it down in the tree line. You see that light right there. And I was like, yeah. He's like, keep an eye on it and watch it move. And I'm watching it, and you got your two lights that are kind of like this, and they're moving. And I'm going, he's like, that's their eyes. And I'm like, just mind blown at that point. I'm watching it like, this dude ain't joking. I'm watching, and after seeing that pair of eyes and kind of the moving, kind of looking out from behind the tree, you start seeing more pairs of eyes. And so there was a couple over there, and it's just like, you're watching this just almost in disbelief, because this is the first time I've seen it. And he's like, they might have been around before, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to see it. And so we're watching it, and it's just like crazy. Now, it's really dark out there. There wasn't really a moon. And then it got to a point where me, him, and one other gentleman, he's like, hey, let's walk up the path a little bit, and we'll kind of just see what we see. So we're walking up the path. It's like pitch black. I'm following him. And then just all of a sudden, you just hear something charging at us. Just, doo, 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 doo. I mean, it was so loud and so fast. And I wasn't expecting it. It's dark. So, of course, I'm like I just jerk, because it's like, what the heck? And he's like, hold on. It's okay. It's okay. It's just a bluff charge. It's okay. And we're just, me and them, we're just like, what? Like, this thing charged at us. And like I said, nobody's out there messing around. We're all out there on an expedition together. We've already seen the eyes moving around, and it was just like crazy. And then a little bit later, we went back to join everybody at the main spot that they were at, and he went on his own to go to the other side, and he said he got bluff charged again. And he was kind of shooken up, because he's like, oh shoot, like, you know, but we were out on the property that we were at, and there's a lot of buildings that line the property. So we go back up finally, which before that, I do want to say that he did have somebody that was going to join us a little after, and the gentleman must have arrived at the property, and he was going to walk down the trail to come down to the pit. And we were waiting to see his flashlight, because he's like, hey, you know, he had a walkie-talkie and his friend had a walkie-talkie, and he's like trying to communicate with him like, hey, you know, I see some light coming, you know, is that you? You know, hey, do you respond? Do you respond? And this guy wasn't responding. And he was even calling like, hey, is that you? Because we see this light. And it was just kind of this white orb of light. And as we're out there, it looked like this white orb of light was really close to the ground. Like somebody was walking with a flashlight, holding it to the ground and kind of moving real slow. And he made a joke, and he's like, he's not responding and nobody's calling back out. Maybe it's the little people. And it's just like, what? He's like, yeah, it's just kind of local lore, like, you know, these little people that come out of the ground at night and forage for food and stuff like that or whatever, and they have little lanterns. But seriously, there was an orb of light on the ground, and it wasn't until later that his friend finally showed up, and we're like, have you been around in the last 10, 15 minutes or whatever? But see, when he showed up, he had his flashlight, and you can clearly tell, like, this is a flashlight. And yeah, don't know what it was. So like I said, we saw the orb of light on the ground, the Bigfoot activity. Who knows? So getting back to what I was saying, we were up on the property. There's like a little pavilion with an overhang. There's some buildings on the property, steel buildings. And I'm with his friend that did show up. And we're looking off into the tree line. And there is just like 4 or 5 pair of eyes just moving through the trees. And what's bizarre is with eye shine, a lot of people think, okay, with eye shine, you know, it's sunlight, moonlight or flashlight or something reflecting off of the eyes, and that's what you're seeing. This is not the case. Their eyes are illuminated by themselves. How does this work? I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot of people, oh, well, how does Bigfoot see out there at night besides moonlight or something? And maybe this is the way. It just looks like somebody got 2 dim yellow light bulbs, stuck them in their eyes and turned them on. Like, that's what it looks like. But we're watching multiple pairs of eyes just out there. And it's just like, there they are, right there. I can't believe it. Almost. And then I'm back by the pavilion with his friend. We're talking, and one of the steel buildings over there, we're just standing there talking, and then all of a sudden, you just hear bang! Shake, 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 shake. I mean, the building, it sounded as if something grabbed the door and slammed it as hard as they can, or slapped the side of the building, and the whole thing just shook. And there's nobody over there, so we're just standing there like, oh. And all I can chalk it up to is Bigfoot, one of them was out there and just slammed the building. And then his friend was like, yeah, we've been out here before. There's a tree right here. There's one night we're out here just sleeping on the table under the pavilion, And yeah, we saw a big Bigfoot just kind of creep up behind the tree. He's kind of peeking out at us because we kept hearing like this owl sound. And finally we kind of looked and there was just one just standing there. Now I can't imagine that, but that's what they said happened. He was like, we're jacked up on Benadryl because of the allergies, and we just kind of, oh, hey, look, and which I'm like, dude, if I would have saw that, I would have been in my car and out of there as fast as possible, which is funny because I'm actually coming out here to go look for Bigfoot, right? So basically that night just kind of quieted down. I made the wrong choice because that night I was like, there's these buildings where there's like a cabin and you could stay in there. But he's like, if you want, you can just sleep on top of the table. And of course I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Dude, I'm out here exposed with the Bigfoots, and it was just too creepy. And it was freezing cold, but it was just too creepy. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. So I ended up actually getting in my car and driving home because I was only about 3 hours away, because the owner of the property has a couple dogs and they were over there under the pavilion with me. And they were just not nonstop barking, but every time there was a sound or movement, they would just, and I'm like, I know what they're barking at, because there's a whole pack of squatches around and they're barking at them. And it's just that paranoia of like, what if one walks up kind of like they did to them? I'm kind of under this pavilion by myself in a way, and there's just no way I'm sleeping. There's just no way. So I hurried back to Dallas in the middle of the night, just because it was just that intense. And what was funny is I wasn't even speeding, but once you get to a town, I forgot what it's called, but Antlers, there's like a curve and then like the speed drops off, and it's the middle of the freaking night and I get pulled over by a freaking cop and I get a freaking speeding ticket because the speed limit drops really hard, and he's waiting there, speed trap. And what was funny, I'm in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma at like 2 a.m. And what's the cop's name? Robert E. Lee. Seriously, 100% true story. I'm just like, oh, come on. Fortunately, the ticket wasn't that expensive, but I'm going to kind of go into my last little bit of storytelling. There's just really two main things to get into, and then we'll kind of finish it up, and I'll talk a little bit real quick about what I think Bigfoot is. So the one big thing is I met my fiance and I was like, hey, you got to come out to Oklahoma to Bigfoot hunt. And she was open-minded to it. So we went out there with my brother, and I can definitely tell when I feel like there's going to be activity, because it's just the woods are kind of more noisy. Like there's just more noise and activity, and we saw a deer and birds, and it feels more lively, and it just feels like that's when they're going to be out tonight. And that particular night we went to a certain spot and kind of hanging out. Started to get dark, and it just got to a point where I'm kind of looking and I'm like, I think I see a pair of eyes over here. We're kind of looking at it, but there was some strange sounds. Now it could have been a bird. I do have a recording of it. I have to look, but it just is this kind of like, and it could be a bird. But we're hearing like sounds like little footsteps and things, and just these little sounds and just minor little sounds. And I know it's the woods, there's things out there, but it had that energy. And so we were out there for a little bit, but then the sounds we were hearing, my brother, who I thought would just, because he's 200 pounds, 6 foot tall, would be, whatever. But he's like, let's get the hell out of here at a certain point. So we end up exiting the path to a road that brings us back up to the cafe over there, because that's where we were camping. We get back up on the road, and my wife doesn't remember this, but we were standing there because I was looking at a light, what I thought was a pair of eyes. It wasn't, but down below the road on the other side, there was just a loud and it was like a really loud, it was crazy. My wife doesn't remember it, but I heard it clear as day, and I was like, what the heck is that? So we go back to camp. My brother's hungry, so he starts making hot dogs. But clear as day, we heard a couple calls right where we were at. Ooh, and it's just like, see, I told you. And it's funny because there's like no signal out there, but he did get a hold of my sister, and he's like, this stuff is real. I thought my brother was nuts. This shit's real. Sorry the language, but this is real. Like, I don't know what it is out here, and same thing happened. I didn't tell this story because it's really short and I almost forgot, but there was another time where I took my friend Jenner out there, and his fiance came out there. They had just met, like literally second date. You want to go Bigfoot hunting? And I actually brought him out in that spot, and we did see a pair of eyes. and he freaked out, and like we left, and that was all the Bigfooting we did, because the second he saw that eyes and she saw it, they were both really uncomfortable and like, we're out of here. And it was funny that night I had more confidence, because the other times I've gone to that spot I get creeped out a little bit unless I'm with a few people, but that time he's like, I'm out, like I can't do it. But that time I was full of confidence, because I'm like, hey look, there's a Bigfoot over there, hey, and I'm like whoop, you know, making whoops to try to see if to get it to move or something. He was like, I'm out. And I wasn't afraid at all. But I think there was like a full moon that night and there was more light, and so I was more comfortable. But anyways, so that night, my brother heard the calls, she heard the calls, you know, noises, the grunting, the this. So it was like, okay, we did hear some stuff. Now, I am going to get into my last bit of story, which is, went back. This time we went, my wife, our friends, they're twins, Morgan and Taylor. And then my brother did show up with his friend, and we did a trip up there, October, and this time was still another interesting time. So we did go back to that spot. We're all together, and you know, with the big group, I'm more comfortable out there. Everybody's more comfortable. It is dark, you know, we're kind of looking out for the eyes. And it did get to a point where I'm looking on the hillside and I'm like, I think there's a pair of eyes. We all saw it. We're all looking at it. We're all watching it. I'm like, just watch really closely to look if it moves. And it does kind of have that sway. So I'm like, hey, let's walk up the path to see if we can get closer and maybe make sure that we're not looking at a light from a street light or something like that. But we get closer, we get to a point, and we're like, okay, well, let's turn around and kind of, you know, see if we can see anything over here. As we were walking, another bluff charge. And it was funny, my friend Morgan, she kind of breaks down into tears. My brother's like, oh my gosh. And it just, my wife had never experienced that. So she's like, everybody just kind of freaking out. I was actually kind of laughing because it's happened before. And it's just like, look at that. I'm over here looking at the eyes over here, and we get bluff charged. Hilarious. And so at that point, everybody's like, bro, let's go back to camp. So we do go back to camp, and we do hear a couple vocalizations. So that was cool. Now we're all hanging out by the tents, and over there, even by the cafe, there's a river, but there's a spot off in the brush where we really hear some loud rustling, some like rustling. And it's like, that was loud. That's not just like a deer or something like that. So kind of on edge, because it's like, considering everything else that had happened. And then what ended up happening was, right by the tent, right in the river, you hear some sloshing sounds, and then another loud, like, you know, like a sound. It's just like disconcerting. And at that point, everybody dashes into the tent. We're done. And yeah, that night I had multiple witnesses. So yeah, so anyways, I do want to conclude my storytelling, my tales of Bigfoot. So I do appreciate you joining. I am going to talk a little bit real quick about what I think Bigfoot is. You're going to be surprised, but I do want to say that I appreciate you joining me. Those are my stories. Those are my experiences. Why do I experience it and other people that live there don't hear anything? I don't know. I do at some point want to meet up with some of these folks. Hopefully my friends, the twins, I can maybe do a little interview with them so they can talk about what they saw and heard for the channel, talk about that. Maybe even do a video with my wife or something. But that night was just crazy. It was really cool that they did get to hear some calls. They got bluff charged, like they got the full experience. And we did even see a little bit more of those like white orbs on the ground, which was really weird. But what is Bigfoot? It's funny because if I talk to some people, you know, they're just like, oh, there's multiple Bigfoot out there. There's not just one running around the U.S. popping out to everybody. And I always kind of like laugh because I'm like, no, it's not just one out there roaming around. There's a family of them. Now, most people think it's just your average animal that just has a higher intelligence and wants to avoid people, and it does a very good job at it. But there's questions like, where's the giant pile of Bigfoot crap? Or where's the bodies? Or, you know, how come you don't find this or that? It is weird, but here's the thing. You have to kind of classify Bigfoot into a slight paranormal state, because there are those questions. Now, you could chalk it up to Bigfoot's really good at avoiding people. They bury their dead, so therefore you're not going to find bodies. But I've heard some stories where people say, you know, the guy that was out there on the expedition that I was talking to, he said he found a couple mounds where he believed they were like buried Bigfoots, and he marked the spot on a GPS, went to go get a friend to take him back to show him, and when he got back, they were gone. There was nothing there, which is really weird. And, you know, it almost does have a paranormal vibe to it. Cue the X-Files music. That's the only thing I can really say, because there's people who say, well, they can manipulate the air around them or their vibration or something to kind of go invisible, because it's almost like they just disappear, you know, tracks disappear, or there's been Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings together. I don't think it's just your average, everyday, plain animal, because I'm not saying you couldn't find it if it was, but it would be like, well, if somebody does find it and they shoot it, but at the same time, I've, you know, just like the gentleman on the expedition said, I was like, you know, we both agree, it's like, even if you did get a clear shot at a Bigfoot and you shoot it, you really believe the other Bigfoots that are around are going to let you cart that body off? Like, it's not going to happen. They will probably fight you for it, because he told a story of a guy that was out there expeditioning for Bigfoots, and he did find one. And it was kind of off in the distance. He had a rifle, and he had the Bigfoot in his crosshairs. And according to him, he said, I had the gentleman that his friend or whatever, had a Bigfoot in his crosshairs, but the Bigfoot was looking at him and giving him a look like, try it. Really weird story, but he's like, I just felt the vibe that if I shoot this thing, something bad's gonna happen. Or even that vibe like, you're not gonna make off with this body. So it's really weird. Now, I do believe there is some sort of paranormal vibe to it. I can't explain it, supernatural, but kind of like Mothman. I do think there was something out there at Point Pleasant at some point. I do think aliens crashed in Roswell, okay? But the only thing I can think of is it is an actual cross. I do think there are government programs, secret, where they do cross human seed with other animals or things. In fact, when aliens abduct people, they always harvest seed. What are they doing with it? Now, this is my personal opinion warning. I do look at everything from more of a biblical lens, and you do have stories of the Nephilim, the hybrids, the giants, and things like that. You know, it could be these extraterrestrials, which I have heard military guys say, hey, I was brought to the secret base and I saw, you know, I was brought in under secrecy and I saw these extraterrestrial beings, these test tubes, there's the Dulce base, I mean, you can go on. But maybe there's some programs of cross-seed, and maybe Bigfoot at some point was a being that was created from a cross and kind of got out or was let out or something, and there is a living population across the US and other parts of the world. They're very hard to find. They're very intelligent. They avoid humans for some reason. I'm never going to have the answers. These are just my opinions. I know they're bizarre. This gets into really bizarre conspiracy stuff. I'm sorry I do not have my tinfoil hat on, but it is just a bizarre thing. Why do they only appear to me? Why do they avoid humans? What do they eat? Why isn't there a big pile of Bigfoot crap on the side of the road one day? You know, why can't they find a body to examine? It's just weird. It's weird. So that's kind of where I'm going to leave off, because like I don't really have an answer, but I do think it has something to do with those lines. I do think there's top secret programs. I do think there's a lot of weird stuff going on behind the scenes that we'll never know about. And, you know, I don't think UFOs are extraplanetary. I believe they could be interdimensional. And I only say that because Hollywood tends to unveil secrets in their movies. And if you watch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I actually like that movie. I don't know what people's problem is, but the movie is the Russian lady recovers the alien body from Roswell, which, having lived in Roswell, I thought that was really cool. But at the end of the movie, you see the spaceship, it goes away, and one of them's like, oh, a spaceship, is it going to outer space? Is it going to a different world? And then the other guy's like, it's going to the world between worlds. And I'm thinking, Hollywood's telling us something right there. Interdimensional. But anyways, appreciate you joining me, guys, for my stories. This was kind of a lengthy video, so if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. You know, if you really like the Bigfoot stuff, like I said, use code Bigfoot on my Conspiracy Corp shop and help support me and the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Plus, I love this shirt. Coming out in the woods and wearing this, it's awesome. So, appreciate you joining me, guys. Let me know what your thoughts and feelings are. If you think I'm crazy, put it in the comments. But I'm not crazy. I don't mind taking a lie detector test. I have witnesses that I would love to bring on and tell you. But appreciate you guys joining me this time. Happy Bigfoot hunting. And remember, the truth is out there. In the words of Fox Mulder. We'll see you later, guys.